Welcome to Fintech Fridays.
Oh yeah!
A weekly podcast brought to you by the National Crowdfunding and Fintech Association of Canada and partners. Covering all things fintech, blockchain, P2P, AI, and alternative finance.
My name is Craig Asano, the founder and CEO of NCFA Canada, welcoming you to season 4 of Fintech Fridays. Today is episode 63. It's a weekly podcast brought to you by NCFA and partners, where we sit down with the incredible people in the fintech and funding community and talk about their journey, their exciting projects, innovations, the latest industry trends and developments, all from their perspective. So today we have an amazing guest with us. Today it's Marcia Dawood. She's an angel investor, advisor, podcast host, author, and more. If all that wasn't enough, she is the leading early stage investor who serves on the SEC's Small Business Capital Formation Advisory Committee. She's a venture partner with Mindshift Capital and member at Golden Seeds. She's also the chair of the Angel Capital Association in the US, which is, like I said, global professional angel investor society. And she's recently published a book, which we're going to get into today, which is awesome. The book is called Do Good While Doing Well, which is a guide for investing for impact, financial returns, and happiness, and bringing the balance of all those things together. She was an associate producer of an award-winning documentary, which I haven't seen. Shame on me. I am going to watch it, Marcia. It's called Show Her the Money. So it's something to also look forward to, where she shares her insights on investing and entrepreneurship. And she's podcast host, the Angel Next Door podcast, and a TEDx speaker. She also walks the walk, as we see, and in her bio has confirmed that she's invested in over 50 early stage companies and funds. So she's committed to expanding support for diverse companies that overcome big problems, and really wants to accelerate positive change and do good in the world, and hopefully everyone else can as well. So she's extremely passionate about these topics. So we're really looking forward to exciting discussion today. And previously, her background is in sales and marketing operations at Kaplan Education, and she's got an MBA from the University of North Carolina, where she currently resides. So Marcia, thanks so much for joining us today to share your time, knowledge, and experience. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Craig.
So we've got a laundry list of topics we want to go through here. So I think we'll just get into a little bit about your background and journey, about how you got involved into angel investing and entrepreneurship, and we'll start there.
Sure. So in 2012, I was invited to an angel investing meeting, and I remember asking, what's angel investing? I know nothing about that. And I went to my first meeting. I saw a couple of local entrepreneurs talk about their companies and the things that they were building. And I was just totally fascinated at what was going on right in my own backyard. I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time, and I just thought, wow, this is really cool. I had no idea. I felt a little bit like I had been living under a rock. And then went to a couple more meetings and started to realize, hey, this is something that I really enjoy. I enjoy getting to know the other people in the group. I enjoy learning about all these different companies and technologies and innovations that are happening in the world. And from there, I ended up living in 5 different cities over a 10-year period, including Pittsburgh, New York, San Francisco, Dallas, and Charlotte. So I saw a lot of different ecosystems. I became a member of the board of the Angel Capital Association and went on to chair the board 2021 through 2023, and then ended up on this Securities and Exchange Commission Advisory Committee, so it's been a really cool, interesting journey, seeing a lot of different ways to invest. And I thought, you know what? We have to get this awareness problem to let everyone know that this is something that if they want to, they can participate in it. So that's what led me to all the things, the book, the podcast, all that.
And that's 5 cities you were saying. There's something about those that are lifelong learners that just, they move around. They're very global, or within the U.S. and the various states. Well, what made you move, or what was the impetus for that?
Yeah, well, my husband is a CFO, so the opportunities just kind of kept coming up in these various places, and a lot of times it was with the same company, and sometimes with a new company. But that really gave me an opportunity because I already knew about angel investing to learn about what was going on in New York versus Pittsburgh, what was going on in Silicon Valley versus Dallas, and so I just found that really fascinating. I mean, there's entrepreneurs and startups scenes in every city and every town. And a lot of times people don't even know what's happening in their own backyard. And I thought, I think it would be really cool to start to get more people just to be aware and learn about it so that they can be involved too.
Do you have a favorite ecosystem that just sort of popped out? They always ask this question, and I've done a lot of travel, many countries. I've lived in 6 and been about 30. It's the first question everybody asks. What's your favorite? Do you have one?
They're all so different.
Yeah.
And I thought that, oh, if I live in Silicon Valley, I'll be like the elite of the elite, right? But there are really cool entrepreneurs everywhere. So I was really surprised at how interesting the ecosystem is in Pittsburgh. And I wouldn't have thought, before I knew anything about angel investing, I would not have thought that Pittsburgh was the place I would find some really cool entrepreneurs and things that are going on. But think about it, a lot of places that have these really amazing universities, like Pittsburgh has Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, they're developing technology a lot of times in these universities that are then spun out into startup companies. And I didn't really understand that or know much about it before I learned about angel investing. So I think it's just fascinating. And I love watching the ideas that people come up with. Sometimes I see it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have never even thought you could have that or do that or whatever it is that they're creating. And I'm just always amazed.
Amazing. I can feel the energy coming off the screen, as it were, here. But Pittsburgh got some good Canadian hockey players out there. Sidney Crosby,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Steelers. So we're all about that. But
Great sports
from
town.
an investing thesis perspective, how do you choose? How do you focus, or do you sort of run with what the group is sort of presenting and saying, or do you have a certain type of company you're looking for?
You know what? That is such a great question. And when I started angel investing, I did not have a thesis. I didn't even know what a thesis was. I wish I'd had a thesis. So, in writing the book, I really wanted to kind of hone in on that because I had a little bit of what I call in the book shiny halo syndrome, meaning I was like, squirrel, ooh, that looks good. That looks good. And I really didn't have a strategy. That's not the way to do this. You should really be thinking about, what do you care about? What do you want to invest in? How much money are you going to put? Like, have a plan, right? So in the book, I walk people through like a lot about that plan because I wish I had had that. So now when I think about a thesis or strategy, I want to think about, what are the things I care about? How much money do I have to invest? And if and it ebbs and flows. Sometimes you might have a little bit more, sometimes you might have a little bit less. It all does depend a little bit on the liquidity of the companies. Is there, are there exits? After you're in this for a couple of years, you will start to see exits. I know that I thought, wow, it does take a little while, but then all of a sudden, I had some that came through in 2020 that was exciting, and I talk about that in the book too. So it kind of ebbs and flows, and I think that it's just a matter of like putting what you care about and your investment strategy, not just your investment strategy within the asset class of early stage investing or angel investing, but also how does it fit in with your overall investment thesis, your retirement accounts, your saving for your kids' college. All of those things are part of your entire investment thesis. And we always say at the Angel Capital Association, when you're going to invest in alternative assets, which it includes angel investing, you really only want to put maybe 5 or 10%, a small portion of your investable assets into that type of an asset class. And then, really have a diversified portfolio. And that's what a lot of financial planners will, talk to you about too.
Smart. I can we can hear the your CFO's husband strategy coming through. Very
Totally.
sensible and smart. So when we sort of zooming out a little bit from angel investing in the US, I mean we have an angel investing ecosystem here in Canada.
Huh.
how would you say, from your perspective, they're different, or what are the similarities, or what does the landscape in the U.S. look like, and how different is it from here in Canada?
Yeah, I think that, like I said, there's entrepreneurs in every city, in every town. I did end up talking to a group of people in Africa, and they actually said to me, well, all roads lead to Delaware. And so I kind of think in some cases it is easier, and a lot of startup companies want to end up in the US. So if you're in Canada, you're in Europe, Africa, you know, US investors we're a little gun shy to invest outside of the country. And a lot of that has to do with all of our tax laws, the IRS, blah, blah, blah. So, but like I said, there's amazing innovation that's happening. And actually, I've talked to entrepreneurs who are in Canada who have told me that there are times, depending on where they live, where they could get, credits, tax credits for their R&D, their research and development. There are places in Canada that are very entrepreneurial friendly. And so sometimes you may even see an entrepreneur go to Canada to get started, and then they may end up back in the US, or somebody from Canada might come. So I think there's a lot of very friendly cross borders going on, especially with Canada since we're so close. But I have heard some really amazing entrepreneurial stories coming out of Canada. So you guys have a lot going on too, which is really cool.
There's definitely a lot going on, but it's on a smaller scale. Hopefully, it's growing. Everybody wants their ecosystems to
Yeah.
grow, so we're so hand in glove with the states. I mean, 70% of our trade goes back and forth. We've been partners for years, and I think from an investment perspective, at least in credit investors, that capital can move across borders a lot easily. So it's all legally possible, and I think the technology is enabling more of that, not just to track and sort of distribute and display the investments and the opportunities, but the regulations are sort of slowly catching up in that regard. I know we have a couple of questions later on in the show. We can touch upon that, but one of the questions that often pops up through my own journey here is through companies looking for early stage capital. How did they approach taking angel investment capital versus, say, a venture capital, VC capital? What are the difference? We've heard a lot of different sort of versions over the years. What's your view?
So the number one thing that's different between an angel investor and a venture capitalist is angels invest with their own money. So they're writing a check out of their own checkbook. And a venture capitalist has usually a fund where they have investors that invest in that fund, and then they make their investment decisions based on their investment thesis. So those are the two kind of biggest things. I actually about 2 years ago, I did a rap battle. I don't usually talk about this too much, but it is on
Rap
my
battle.
website. I did a rap battle of an angel investor versus a venture capitalist, and I go through all of the differences between the two. So if you want to put that in the show notes, you're welcome to do that. It's kind of a 3-minute education on angel investors versus venture capitalists.
That Sorry, that's awesome. We're definitely going to dig that one up and put it in the show notes.
Totally. But I guess I'd say, when a company is first thinking about taking investment, I think that is the most critical time. And to really not just think about, oh my gosh, I've heard so many founders, they're like, oh my gosh, I need money. I need to, get something so that I can build the product, so that I can show that I have traction, so I can get more money. And it's like, it's a little bit of a rat race. And I really think if entrepreneurs just took a breath and said, "Hey, what is it that I need, not just now, but what am I going to need 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years, 5 years from now?" And really started to plot that out about what are the milestones I'm going to need to hit? How am I going to develop my product or service or whatever they're doing? And then how am I going to get to that exit? Now, when you go back to start to talk to investors, they have a pathway, a plan that at least has been talked about, thought out, as opposed to this like, hurry up, I need money. Oh my gosh, I need to get to the next, like the next milestone, because it is like a marathon. And a lot of times I feel like founders are like sprinting their way to the next place, but really thinking about that in advance, but also building those relationships with potential investors way before you need money. Because I've had too many people come up to me and say, "Hey, we see you're an investor. We'd like you to invest in our company." Well, I don't know you. I don't have any idea what you're building. I don't know what you've worked on in the past, but in some cases angels will be involved with a company or watch a company for sometimes months or even years before they'll make an investment. I know that we did that at Mindshift Capital with a couple of different companies. We were watching, kind of seeing how they were operating, what were the milestones they were hitting, and then getting to a point where we would invest. So I always encourage entrepreneurs to do that. In fact, I did write an article for Fast Company talking about this. We can put that in the show notes too for people.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's great advice. Being more strategic, and it's not a sprint. It's a journey. Are there any other tips or advice, or what are some of the common errors or challenges that you think would be, great insight for someone listening to the show here today?
So I think sometimes I'll see companies that will say, you know what, I really I need the money. I need to do this. I need to like right now. And if they just took a little bit more time, really thought through all of the things that they wanted to do, how they were going to do it, I think that they would get farther and still be able to show the progress and really be able to use the best practices, not just of what they're learning about, but really get a network of the other entrepreneurs that are out there. I find that entrepreneurs will really help each other. I know everybody's busy and they're all trying like heads down to do that kind of the same thing, but that entrepreneurial network can be so helpful because, who somebody who might not be the right investor for one company could be the right investor for another company. And if you know each other and you're really able to kind of use what you're doing, really think strategically about how you're going to get there and be able to let people know, put it out there. I see too many entrepreneurs that say, "Oh, I don't want to tell anybody yet what I'm doing because I need to build it. So then they'll see it and it'll be beautiful and everybody will love it." And I think to myself, okay, but we need to kind of see the process along the way and we want to see the journey. So don't be afraid to talk about it.
I think that's great advice. I think you're absolutely right. The days of being in the basement and hiding and waiting for the gold ribbon, the gold standard, it's all done. It's more, iterative, and those relationships are key. So I think, really one of the benefits of doing a show like today, and getting this discussion out there is, fostering, just sparking the initial relationship and the idea to go cross border, connect with some entrepreneurs, hopefully some investors, and start that journey, be more strategic. So I think those are great advice for any entrepreneur. It doesn't matter where they are in the world. So from a angel investing perspective, what has been, most rewarding for you, or challenging? You can take that kind of question from both sides.
Sure.
What has it been like? You've been at it for many years, and so, you're in the prime as an angel investor. So what has it been like for you?
Yeah, I think that like probably one of the real rewards has been just getting to see a little bit behind the curtain, like what's really getting worked on out there. What are the innovations that we really want to see? Because I know I am always amazed at the type of things entrepreneurs are working on. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, I would have never thought of that myself. So that's neat. I also think it is super rewarding to be able to meet so many different types of people. I mean, the entrepreneurs are doing amazing things and I love meeting them, but also meeting the other investors, meeting the other people that are either in an angel group or a fund or just in the overall ecosystem. I met people that I would have never met in my corporate life, who were working in other corporate lives. And that intersection of coming together, I think that's really cool. And while I was still working corporate world, it actually angel investing kind of helped open my eyes to, hey, I now am looking at these startup companies as a whole picture. I'm looking at the team, I'm looking at their product and how they're going to market and all these other things. And maybe in my corporate job, I was just like in this one little lane, but now I'm starting to think about it and broaden out a little bit. And I think that's really a fascinating way to learn about something new and be able to incorporate it into your day to day. So all of those things are, I find, very rewarding parts of it. Now, if you want me to tell a little bit about what's not so rewarding,
Yeah.
is there are definitely challenges in building companies. I mean, there are ups and downs that entrepreneurs have. If you are very worried about, the ups and downs part, then you probably just want to read the quarterly newsletter and just see what's going on. Because sometimes they do have challenges, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to give up. And that's one thing I found about entrepreneurs. They will fight, and they are very passionate about whatever they're working on, and they will continue no matter what. And I will say that probably one of the more frustrating things was what happened during the pandemic and how it affected so many companies. A lot of them really, really struggled. Fortunately, here in the US, and I know Canada did as well, like stepped in and was able to help a lot of the companies. Some didn't make it though. Some really thrived. And then in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years, the investing market has just really dried up, and it's been extremely difficult for entrepreneurs to raise money in 2022, 23, and even part of 24 now. It has been challenging. I am hoping with interest rates in the US lowering, there hopefully the M&A market will start to open up again. We'll start to see more acquisitions. There'll be more liquidity. I think all of those things could really help make a better environment for 2025, which is going to make it easier for these entrepreneurs to fundraise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if you mentioned at the beginning of the show, but how big is angel investing in the States? Is there a number? How much annually? How many billions is invested, or hundreds of millions, or tens of millions?
Yeah, there are numbers. In fact, we put out a report. The SEC advocacy office, Small Business Advocacy Office, does put out a wonderful annual report. You can just go onto the SEC.gov website in the US and be able to pull a lot of different numbers. But just to give you an idea, there's roughly about 300,000 angel investors in the US. That's a tiny, tiny fraction of obviously the total US population. And we've determined, through the Angel Capital Association data and some other data here in the US, that there's probably 16 million households that could be what we determine to be an accredited investor, which means you have a certain level of wealth or income in order to make a private investment. You don't have to be an accredited investor if you're doing things like equity crowdfunding, but here in the US, that is a big deal if you're going to write an individual check for equity into a company. So 16 million households, that's a lot. And we only have 300,000 people participating. So I really feel like we have a big awareness problem here, because I'll see founders all the time who are trying to raise money. And then I talk to some people that I know could potentially be interested in investing. And they say, well, I can't do that. That's only for rich people, well connected. You have to be flying in private planes and all these types of things. And that's just not true anymore. Nowadays, if you're interested in investing, there are ways that you can invest for as little as $50, $100 in an equity crowdfunding campaign. In my book, I talk about how you can invest with philanthropic dollars into a for-profit company. It's like there's a couple steps involved, but it can be done, and it can actually multiply then your charitable contributions. So there are a lot of ways that people can get involved. I think it's just a matter of picking the thing that that's gonna resonate with them, and then how they can help to contribute to the innovation they want to see.
Yeah, it's similar. All that's a great answer and perspective on it. And I know we've met a lot of who investors that would qualify as credit investors, but they're not interested in taking those risks, or maybe it's the education and the opportunity to see how it could work. And I think that's why the importance of relationship building and see how others are doing it, being strategic, taking time, baby steps along the way. So it's very sensible. Since you mentioned it, the SEC Small Business Capital Formation Advisory Committee, if that's exactly what it's called,
So
but
that's what's called, it's a mouthful,
that's
but
what
yes.
it's called. It's a mouthful. So who's in that room, and what are some of the latest topics that is the view that there's enough capital What's being talked about? What changes might be, on the foot coming soon?
Yeah, I actually love the diversity of our committee. We're really talking about small business capital formation. So, how are we going to get money so that small businesses can grow? And if you look at how many small businesses there are in the US, in Canada, in every country, they're everywhere. And how do we get them to be more sustainable? To be able to, for those startups that are scalable, the ones that we think are going to be acquired, or they're going to have what we call an exit where there'd be a liquidity event. Sure, there's a lot of that, and we talk about capital formation for those companies. But what about the mom and pop, Main Street type of companies? What if there's a coffee shop or a dry cleaner that needs to get just a little bit of funding locally in order to get off the ground? There's ways that we talk about that too. We have a member of the committee, George Cook, who is the founder of Honeycomb Credit, and that is a debt crowdfunding platform. And they work with coffee shops and the Main Street businesses all the time in order for them to be able to raise the capital they need. And then that isn't an equity exchange, that's actually just a debt instrument, so that the person who's investing gets paid back over time just like they would any other loan, with a little bit of interest. And that can really help that local business. But what I think is so cool about it is, if I can invest in the local coffee shop down the street and then I go as a customer, like, how cool is that I'm helping them and I get to know them, and now it's just like building your local ecosystem so that everybody can thrive and everybody can win.
Investing in your local community, it's so critical, that support. And how good does that feel, right?
Mhm.
It's as you say, you would walk in, and not to brag, but you're more involved. You're that cup of coffee that that maybe the debt instrument, your support, your financial voting with your dollars in your own community goes a long way. So hopefully some of that, it sounds like some of that's in the book, so we're definitely looking forward to getting our copy. um, Women and funding, we have a stat here that says they receive less than 3% of funding, presumably in the US. I mean, this is a global problem, here in Canada, of course, as well. So why do you think today, still, after talking about it for so long, and many kicks that they can to move the needle to enable or democratize or allow more to make change, um, you know, why is that disparity there? What do you think can be done to further improve it?
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about the number, first of all, because we do talk about this 3%, less than 3% goes to women, less than 1% goes to people of color. And, those numbers are out there. They're obviously very bad. If you start to look at the numbers more from the angel perspective, at the Angel Capital Association, we've actually found that the angel numbers are a little bit better. We're probably around 25% of the funding is going toward female founders. And when we talk about a female led company, at least in a lot of the groups that I'm in, we're talking about a diverse team, but we'd like to see a woman in the C suite with a significant portion of equity. So we're not saying that these companies have to be all women, right? So we're all about diversity and making sure that there are lots of voices and lots of people at the table. But how do we change this? How do we get more funding? That 3% number is, just to clarify, is more like a venture capital number. And the venture capital dollars are obviously much, much, much bigger than what's happening at Angel World. So we're just kind of like the little piece of the pie that actually helps those early stage companies get to the point where they can take venture capital money. But for the most part, what we're trying to do, from as an investing standpoint, is just help these companies with the money that they can get from either a fund or from the angel world, and be able to like continue on in order to get toward an exit.
But is there more that is it sort of a pitch to the VCs that they need to back more, different types of companies, or is it more on the investment side that there needs to be more female investors that can build that base of equity, that can feel confident to take those risks, to build an incredible career off of investing, wherever they might land. Where really does the rubber hit the road? Because it seems that there's always efforts, but every report, it's the same issue. And how do we get there? Maybe what are the baby steps? Is it something the government needs to do? Is it something that through education we need to democratize more participation? Like, what do you really think the number one advice or message to move that needle, and who is that message towards?
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. Democratizing the participation. Um, if we want to get more funding to women, to people of color, we're going to have to get more people who look like them in the room writing checks, and who will be able to support them. And so we've seen the numbers move a little bit, like I was saying, in Angel World. And I think it's because we have been very thoughtful in a lot of the different angel groups, and especially in the Angel Capital Association, to be able to encourage more women to get involved as investors. And one of the things that I found, and one of the reasons I wrote the book, I have the podcast, is I'm trying to get people to see themselves in this role as an investor. And sometimes that word investing can be it can throw people a little bit. They might think, oh, investing, like if I'm going to be an investor, I have to know all of these finance things. I have to have a finance degree. I have to be able to make a financial decision that's going to have this incredible outcome at the end. And if I don't get that incredible outcome at the end, then I will look like a bad investor. And that's like very, very traditional mindset from a long time ago. And even as women, we have been socialized to, men do investing, we do philanthropy. That's a lot of what we see, especially here in the US. So like, how do we change that? How do we get the awareness built up? So because it's now all kind of coming together, of course we want to help these nonprofit companies, but they're just a small portion of the overall innovation and things that are happening in the world. So how do we get more people to realize, like, you can be a part of this too? You have a voice, and that voice can help to fund the types of not just founders, but the companies that they're building that can actually help those different groups.
And how would those women who would be new to investing, would you advise to get involved? Would it be maybe having a look at some of the angel investing groups, become a member as you got your original footing? Would it be to check out the equity crowdfunding platforms and take a look and start to ask some questions and build a relationship with the founders, and see what resonates? Is it at that ground level that the change has to be transformative? That's where it has to. They have to feel the passion and the willingness to ride the volatility and take those risks, but yet at the same time feel they're doing they're getting this incredible, like, positive experience, making change. This is really a lot of what your book is talking about. So maybe we can jump into there, the do good while doing sort of well. And I have a question here around what does it mean, like, doing good through their investments, and en route to becoming happy, but at the same time having it's not philanthropy, it's something different. So how would you sort of say that summarize the book and your thoughts, and for anyone who might be reading it, what can they expect to get out of it?
Yeah, so I mean, doing good a lot of times can lead people to think about charity. We're going to volunteer for charity. We're going to donate to charity. And like I said, doing that is wonderful. But here in the US, for example, $475 billion is donated to charities annually here in the US. But that's only about 1% of the equivalent of only about 1% of the US stock market. So if you're thinking about nonprofits and the burden that is being placed on them to do these big things like cure diseases and cure our planet, or all of those things, those are that's a lot of pressure to put on nonprofits. So how do we think about doing good and doing well? So doing well used to always be, oh, well, I'm going to have a retirement account. I'm going to invest in stocks or bonds or mutual funds or whatever they're going to do so that we can get a financial return. But you can have both of those. You can invest in the things that you care about and be able to get a financial return at the same time. Now, again, this is a risky asset class. We've talked about that before, but that's why you do things like diversify your portfolio. You get involved in various ways there. And in the book, I go through many examples of this. And the other thing, I got to a point when even after writing the book and having some early readers go through it, they said, hey, we really like the exercises. I have a couple of exercises in the book. They said we really like the exercises because they help us like really think about and walk us through like what we would do or how we would do it. Or one person who really would love the idea of going to join an angel group like you just gave that example of, that person might love that. And another person might hate that. And they might think, oh, well, I'd much rather go onto an equity crowdfunding site and look online. Perfectly fine. There's lots and lots of options for everyone, which is why I ended up writing a workbook to go with the book that has even more exercises and kind of step by step and walking people through, hey, this is what this really looks like. And if you want to try something, you can kind of try it in a way in the workbook with before you actually have to go invest any money or invest any time. It's just a way to get started and get thinking about it before you would actually go do something.
So the book gives them that background. It gives them the information. It dispels some of the myths. It even has that strategic workbook approach where it's getting them to think about their own situation and sort of meet face to face, which kind of scares a lot of people. They're talking about money.
Yes.
They're talking about investing their own money, and
Mhm.
so that at the end of that book, the next step would be, hey, there's the Angel Association. Let's say the ACA in the US or whatever they feel comfortable with. At that point, they would feel more uh, ex- armed with a bit more knowledge, so they're ready to ask more targeted questions to get involved and participate. So I
Absolutely.
think it's fantastic. I mean, the the thing about the book, who would you say it's targeting? Who did you write the book for? I now have some understanding of why you wrote the book, the passion for change and wanting to make that difference. But who from your feedback so far from readers, who is it targeted for? And, and
I
and
wrote
what has the response been since you launched it?
Yeah, I wrote the book for people who want to make a difference, but really don't know how one person alone can do that. Because I know I felt like that. I felt like, well, I'd hear that saying, be the change you want to see in the world. And I think, yeah, I'm up for that. I want to be the change. But wait a minute, how do I do that? How can I make a difference as one person? And you can make a difference. And it does require a lot of us, one people, one person to make that kind of a difference, right? So that's really who I wrote the book for. And the response has been really wonderful. People have told me over and over again, even people who are already in the angel space have told me, I learned stuff that I didn't realize. I kind of feel like because I did move around a lot and I was involved in different groups. I was the person who was like, "Oh, that looks like a cool model. That looks like a cool way to invest. Let me try it." Which probably isn't the best strategy when you don't really know what you're doing. Like I don't recommend that. And that's really why I wrote the book, but that was my learning process and I really did like trying out all the things and I thought, well, I tried out all these things. Maybe I should actually tell people about it so that they don't make some of the mistakes that I made. And so I think I wrote the book for like the me in 2012. I wish in 2012 somebody had handed me this book and said, "Hey, here's all the things." Now, in 2012, all of these things didn't necessarily exist because some of the rules that have changed in order to allow some of these things have happened since 2012. But yeah, that's really who I'm targeting. And I had a friend of mine who read the book recently and she said, I this isn't really my topic. I knew it was about investing and yeah, whatever. She's like, but then it was your book and you're my friend, so I'm going to read it. And then she says, but I really liked it. And I thought, okay, well, good. You know, so she got a lot out of it, even though at first she was kind of like, I'm not really an investing person. But now I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to demystify all of the things that are out there about what we think is actually going to be the way that we have to invest. And that's just not the case anymore. We have so many options.
Fantastic. And how do folks get that book? Is it in all the bookstores? It's I How do they get it?
It's in the bookstores. You can get it on Amazon US and Amazon CA. You can go to my website and order it directly from the publisher. Lots of options.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, no, I'm excited to read it. I mean, I would have thought I would have read it prior to the podcast, but we'll do that after. Still definitely looking forward to it, and I might pen some thoughts post read and connect them into the show notes here, along with the rap battle. The rap battle's a must. We got to pull the
Yes.
the rap battle together. Moving to the next topic around angel investing and technology. I mean, a lot of the education that NCFA provides is really around a lot of the new tech innovations and the impact and the implications, and not just from an entrepreneur's perspective, but also for investors. So, from your perspective, there's obviously AI has exploded on the scene and it's proliferating and having significant impact already just after sort of hitting the market in a couple of years, and it seems to be changing daily. We try to track as much as we can, but the blockchain space as well, the tokenization. How do you see some of these technologies transforming sort of investing broadly, or maybe specifically to angel investing? I know there's a lot happening, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, in fact, we talked about this quite a lot. We had every year we have a women's investor forum through the Angel Capital Association that I host in Boston. And the last 2 years, we've talked a lot about AI, especially from the standpoint of and things with the blockchain, all of these kind of technologies that are coming out, and we're thinking to ourselves, okay, we are seeing companies who have some component of this in their business model. And we as angels are worried about how do we even evaluate a company like this, because in some cases the technology is changing so fast that we're not even sure how to really do that. And what we've learned from some of the experts out there is that um, looking at the company and the problem that the company is solving as a whole, and take the technology out of it for a minute to really see, is that something that's sustainable? Is that something that's needed? And don't get so caught up in the shiny object of the tech and the AI piece. That's been really helpful to me personally as an investor anyway, because I feel like I was feeling a little kind of overwhelmed at how many companies are out there right now doing really cool, innovative things, especially with AI. But I was really struggling about how am I going to evaluate that, and what would it mean for me as an investor? And so I think taking that lens back and kind of looking at it a little bit differently and going back to some of the basics of diligence and how you look at a company, that to me made a lot of sense. And so I feel a little bit better now when I do see companies like that.
Yeah, it's sort of like a Warren Buffett back to basics,
Oh,
and
yeah.
if the fundamentals aren't there and you don't understand it, walk away. And
Yeah.
so I think there's a lot of hype and a lot of companies, and they are solving a lot of efficiencies or inefficiency gaps, but will they be here tomorrow as the landscape is completely changing? And so, is it a cash grab, or is it a real business? And so that's it's certainly interesting to hear. I mean, angel in investing, the 300,000 angels that are in the US, and far fewer here in Canada, but where do you see the angel investing in the future? Is it growing? We're sitting here in 2024. Let's have a look at where do you think it'll be in 5 years, or where do you think it'll be in 10 years from today?
Yeah, well, what I'm really hoping, and I do talk about it in the book, and then I literally just had a podcast episode not too long ago with the CEO of Republic.com, which is a equity crowdfunding platform
Yeah.
here in the US, and they're a global platform too. But um, I really believe that we will start to see a democratization of the private markets. So if you think about how difficult it was to buy a public stock back in the 80s and 90s, the fees were very high. You had to have, a brokerage account in a certain way and have it funded with a lot of money before you could even think about buying a public stock. It took a long time. Nowadays, you can go on to E-Trade or Robinhood or any online brokerage platform, and you can trade for free in seconds. So, wow, what a difference, a couple decades make. I think we're going to, because of the speed of technology and advancement, I think we're going to start to see that in the private markets too, more and more over the next 2, 5, 10 years. I really believe that you're going to start to see more people getting involved because they're realizing they can.
Yeah, they can, and there's more tools to evaluate. There's more sort of opportunity to get access to deals that would otherwise, let's say 5, 10 years ago, be limited to a small group that didn't want to share that opportunity, didn't want to talk about that deal. So it's certainly, and then all the democratization from the diversity perspective, others that, I know there's that accredited investor threshold, but retail investors or near accredited investors,
Mm.
they're looking to generate some wealth. They're looking to have some impact. And so this whole angel investing as an individual, not a fund, approach is explosive in terms of its potential. And so I think that's spot on, the democratization of private markets, and we see that. I mean, a lot of companies are hesitant now to go public, or certainly delaying their going public. There's been hardly any IPOs here in Canada for some time, and so hopefully overall the folks will strike the right balance just to enable enough capital from all channels to support the companies, so we can continue to do what we do. But super interesting for sure. I have an interesting question here around, as I do recognize the time, we're getting nearer to the end, but if you could give yourself one piece of advice, when you first got into angel investing, and I think this sort of dovetails well into your book, and others that might be contemplating making that investment, through whatever channel, what would that piece of advice be to someone, to yourself, just getting into the game?
Yeah, just take your time, look around, look at what's out there. Go to a local event in your neighborhood, in your community. Find out, you can literally just go search online for startup events and then you could just fill in your city or town. And there are things going on everywhere. And just start to get to know people, start to get to know what's going on near you. And then you can there's a lot of things online you can look at too, but just take your time, get started, just find out what interests you and kind of see where that leads you, as opposed to thinking, oh my gosh, I have to go and do this and I have to write all these big checks and things like that. Like don't get overwhelmed by the details, just get started.
Good advice. Do you have any inclination to launch your own venture fund for women? It's
Well,
sort of I only say that because it's sort of, what's next for Marcia? What's next for Marcia? We're talking a little bit about the future of angel investing and private markets, but what about Marcia? You're very accomplished. You're doing all these things. You love it. What's next for you?
Well, that's what Mindshift Capital is. We are an investment firm that invests in women-led companies globally. And, so we have a fund and we're deploying capital. And, to me, that is funds are really one of the best ways that people can get involved because you instantly get a diversified portfolio. And I really love that about funds. So for me, helping people get connected to the things that they care about and the things that they want to invest in, the people that they want to meet. I'm hoping that that's what the book will do. It will inspire people to go out and find out what's going on in their local community, get connected to people that are have the same interests that they do. For me personally, I have an interest in anybody who's working on something related to curing ALS because my mother passed from that disease back in 2018. So, connecting with other people or connecting with companies that are trying to work on a treatment or a cure for something like that, that's how all of these things get started. So, I love to see people just going after the things that they care about, and who they meet and how they do it along the way is great.
Fantastic. Well, you connected with someone today, in about ALS, and that's me. My grandfather passed for the same
Oh, wow.
disease, and so it was a very quick thing that happened. And before you knew it, several months, just a few months after being diagnosed, he had passed. So I get it. I get it. So we're on to as we start wrapping up the podcast here, we'd like to do this rapid fire questions just for fun. So we're expecting short, snappy answers here for some rapid fire questions. Are you ready to go?
Ready to go.
Okay. So in a word, what do you think the greatest opportunity in angel investing is today?
Options. People have options, and I don't think there were nearly as many options in the past. So I'm really excited about all the options that people have today.
Options. So the folks listening to the podcast, you got to take one of those options and run with it, or take it slow. Up to you. But there are options. So that's definitely a good thing. So next question: if you could have dinner, sort of, or get together with any influential figure, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I love this question because I think it ebbs and flows. One minute it could be one thing, and one minute it could be another. Right now, because of the book and my podcast and everything, I am truly fascinated at people's relationship to money. And I really love the all of the work that Ramit Sethi has done in order to bring about this awareness of money. How do you feel about money? How are you going to make money? And that's a topic that I think is kind of another next step back to your earlier question of what I want to start exploring. Like, I don't know that we can get as many people on the playing field for angel investing as we could until we start to talk about that money thing. So I would love to sit and have a conversation with him. That's for sure.
The taboo of money and the topic of it, it's pervasive. It's there. Next question: what's the most surprising thing you've learned on your journey as an investor?
So that's a toughie because I mean I'm surprised a lot of times by a lot of different things, and then in other cases you're not surprised, right? But I guess I would say that sometimes I just am fascinated at what these entrepreneurs are working on. I Sometimes they come up with these ideas that I would have never even thought this could possibly exist, and I'm just so in awe of those visionaries. I'm more of like an operations kind of person, so I just love hearing the stories and all the things that they're coming up with.
Just the innovation. Yeah, it's so
Mhm.
exciting. Last question for rapid fire: what is one myth in angel investing that you'd like to debunk?
That you have to be rich. So often I've heard people say, well, I've seen shows on TV and like they fly in private planes and, they have billions of dollars. I would have to have billions of dollars in order to be an investor. And that, simply is not true. So just being able to get people to think about investing in an early stage company a little differently, that's what's going to start to change the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, this has been incredible, Marcia. Really want to thank you for spending the time, sharing your knowledge. As we mentioned many times, you're very accomplished. We're excited to follow your continued journey on what's next for you, and you're of course welcome back anytime on the show. How do folks get in touch with you if they want to follow up or learn more? And maybe one last message about that book, and then we'll get down to the wrap up here.
Sure. So they can find me at my website. It's just my name, marciadawood.com. There's lots of resources on there. I do have a podcast webpage that does have playlists. So, for example, if you're interested in learning more about equity crowdfunding, or I've had a couple people on talking about AI, for example, that's all in there. And you can just click on like AI or equity crowdfunding, whatever it is, and it'll pull up whatever episodes are related to that. So, and plus, of course, there's always lots of book resources as well.
I love the interest in equity crowdfunding. Of course, at NCFA, we have been involved in grassroots for many years, and it continues to grow. We still are in contact with a lot of those relationships with the guys in the U.S., the folks in the U.S. that have spent many years democratizing, tracking the data. Of course, Republic and their evolution into become not just the original model of equity crowdfunding, but these new tokenized global platforms and liquidity pools. So super exciting for sure. I'm sure we could cover off a lot more topics, but yeah. So thanks so much for sharing your valuable time with us, Marcia. It's been great. And just to wrap up the podcast, folks, if you are new to Fintech Fridays here, please check out some of the incredible past episodes. I think you will be surprised with what you find, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday for another episode of Fintech Fridays. So have a good weekend, and thanks a lot, Marcia, for joining us today. We'll certainly talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You've been listening to Fintech Fridays, brought to you by NCFA and partners. Tune in weekly for the latest Fintech Friday podcast by subscribing to this channel. The National Crowdfunding and Fintech Association of Canada is a nonprofit actively engaged with social and investment fintech sectors around the globe and provides education, research, industry stewardship, services, and networking opportunities to thousands of members and subscribers. For more information, please visit ncfacanada.org.
Oh yeah!